Hey everybody, Sean from Media Assault here, and this week I want to take a look at a movie that was recently remastered and released in the United States in its uncut Japanese form, and this is the kaiju film Gamera the Giant Monster. And I want you to take a really good look at the cover of this DVD, because if you see this on store shelves and you're a kaiju fan, I urge you to purchase it. Not so much because this is an excellent movie, because everybody knows Gamera is, well, not quite up to the same level of quality as Godzilla. But what I want you to do is I want you to support Shout Factory, the company that is releasing these films to the American market, because they are doing a fantastic job so far with this series. If this is any indication. Now, there is another title that was recently released in July. This was released in May. July, Shout Factory released the second Gamera film, Gamera vs. Baragon. And I have that on order. It hasn't come in yet, but let's take a look at the packaging on this. Now, of course, Gamera was released in 1965 in Japan. And if you open this up, get you to take a look at that. You've got the DVD here, not there, and you've got a little mini poster here, but this is actually a book. And I'll take this out and kind of show this to you. This has a commentary that was written by the director of the first, well, actually all of the films, Noriaki Yuasa, and a number of different pictures in here. And you've got the character biographies from this first film. And then this is sort of an interesting, the anatomy of Gamera, which is pretty cool. Bet you didn't know he had a fire sac, a uranium sac, an oil sac, and a coal sac, as well as a magma sac inside of his body. But how else do you think he produces those flames that come out of him? As you can see from the quality of this packaging, the film, the print is pristine, and it's presented in the original Diascope format. It is a 2x35, I believe. That's probably wrong. I'm not real good with aspect ratios, but it is in an anamorphic widescreen print. It looks fantastic. Now, I kind of want to give you a little bit of a history lesson as far as how this film normally is released in the United States, or was prior to May of this year. This is something I picked up at Half Price Books a little earlier this year, and this is typical of how the movie finds itself on DVD prior to the Shout Factory release. This is, you can see Gamera the Invincible. This is the American International Pictures American version of the film, which features some new footage shot with American actors, and it's re-edited. It actually runs about 7 minutes longer than the original Japanese version. But this film, the way it's presented here on this DVD, is full screen. It's cropped horribly. The sides are cut off. There's a lot of hair and stuff. The print looks terrible. And this is also packaged with Attack of the Monsters, which is a very silly Gamera film that came later in the series. It's actually Gamera versus Guiron, I believe is how you pronounce his name, or Guiron. Anyway, I picked this up for like $1 or something. It's terrible. By contrast, this is phenomenal. It looks great. It sounds great. It's got the original Japanese dialogue. There's no dubbing. There are subtitles. I don't believe, although I could be wrong, there may be an English soundtrack on here. I didn't use it. You watch the subtitled version. Subtitles don't bother me. But pick this up, please. It's awesome. As far as the film goes, like I said, I'm not going to go on and on about the merits of Gamera the Giant Monster in terms of being a fantastic movie. But I do urge you to support the Shout Factory re-releases. Show them some support if you're a kaiju fan, because they definitely deserve some recognition for what they're attempting to do for us kaiju fans in the United States. Now, I will talk about the film, and I'll talk about it fairly briefly. It was released in 1965, and it was basically Studio Daiei, their take on the Godzilla franchise. Now, Godzilla was put out by a studio in Japan called Toho. The first film in the Godzilla series came out in 1954, and by 1965 they had made who knows how much money on the Godzilla films. So the Daiei Studios decided they were going to jump on the bandwagon and do this kaiju thing, and they started with Gamera. Now, the commentary and the special features of this new Shout Factory disc have a wonderful special on them, and it is called, it's like taking a look back at Gamera or something like that. But it has interviews with the director, the producer, special effects people from the Gamera series. And what the director said, now the director passed away, I believe, in 2004, but this was obviously recorded before that. One of the things that he says is that he was given the job sort of by default. Nobody else wanted to touch this movie, so it was handed to him, and because he was a young director, he wasn't in a position to refuse it. He had to make a name for himself and all the challenges that went along with producing this film. Keeping that in mind while you watch the movie kind of gives you the ability to suspend your disbelief even more so than is usually required to watch a kaiju film, especially one that's using suitmation and the type of special effects that we're talking about from 1965. They basically had no idea what they were doing. They were improvising most of the time. And I mean, it shows in the production, but it's interesting to hear that perspective and then watch the film. So if you do get this version of the film, I highly recommend watching the interview with the director before you watch the film, just to kind of put yourself in the right mindset to watch the relatively poor special effects of Gamera. Now, the plot, I'll be real brief on that. Basically, Gamera is a giant monster that is awakened by an atomic bomb blast in the northern hemisphere, or the extreme northern hemisphere. It's like the North Pole. There's apparently a fleet of Russian bombers that are flying into United States airspace around Alaska, I would assume, and they are chased down by some U.S. Air Force fighter planes, and the Russian planes shoot at the American planes. The American planes shoot back and shoot down one of the bombers. The bomber crashes, and the nuclear bomb inside the bomber explodes. Well, the explosion releases Gamera from apparently his frozen slumber, and he proceeds to head straight to Tokyo. Okay. Basically, he consumes energy sources, so he's always in the mood to eat oil, fire, anything that he can to boost his energy levels. Now, I showed you the inside anatomy of him. You know, he's got an oil sac, a magma sac, a fire sac, and all that stuff. Apparently, that's how he energizes himself. He actually eats energy and then produces energy. Makes perfect sense if you're in a kaiju film, I suppose. But anyway, because he is born out of an atomic explosion, or awakened by an atomic explosion, the armed forces of Japan initially think that he's just going to die from the radiation exposure that he suffered, and he won't be much of a threat. Well, he keeps coming and coming and coming and attacking, and they realize they got to do something. So the film is kind of interesting in that it shows the cooperation of all of the superpowers of the world at the time. Now, remember, this is 1965, so the Cold War was in, at its zenith, I guess. This is a few years after the Cuban Missile Crisis and whatnot. But this film shows Japan and China and the United States and Russia, I believe, all kind of working together to figure out how to solve this problem and how to get rid of Gamera from the planet, and not being able to use conventional weapons. And I won't tell you what they do to get rid of them, but it's kind of an interesting, if extremely improbable, solution. And like I said, the film is silly, and it's a kaiju film, but it's also one that's interesting to watch because it features the exploits of a young director who, with his crew, kind of we're winging it day to day, and it's kind of interesting to watch the film with that in mind. So I highly recommend this version of the film. Definitely pick this up if you're a kaiju fan. It's well worth it. It also features an audio commentary. And I forget the guy's name. He wrote a book about Eiji Tsuburaya. I have not listened to the commentary yet, but I started watching it, and I hadn't actually watched this version of the film, the Japanese uncut version. I hadn't watched that version of the film yet, so I just went to the regular Japanese soundtrack and turned the commentary off, but I will go back and watch the commentary just because I want to hear what this guy has to say, because this it's educational and entertaining, I guess, if you're a kaiju fan. So definitely check this out. Stay away from any of the other American releases at this point. You can pick this up for $15 at Best Buy or Amazon or wherever. Don't pay more than that, because if you do, you're getting ripped off. But definitely support Shout Factory and their recent re-releases of the Gamera films. I can't recommend it highly enough. Again, like I said, it's more for the packaging and the special features than the actual film, which, is I'd give the film a 6 out of 10. I'd give the packaging and the quality of this set, though, well, not a set, I'd give the quality of this particular packaging and this release of the movie a 9 out of 10. This is really, really good stuff. That's all I can really say. So check out Gamera the Giant Monster, newly released on DVD, and then check out the other Shout Factory DVDs that are coming down the pike. Gamera vs. Baragon is coming out, or did come out, in July, and the rest are scheduled to follow over the months to come, and I think the next one's coming out in September. I will have a review of the Gamera vs. Baragon DVD coming up when it arrives, probably later this month, and I'll be doing the other ones too, so I'm definitely going to pick up this whole set. And keep watching, subscribe, comment, rate, and thanks to everybody that's been watching over the past year. Thanks again. Bye.